Can you talk to us about, from your perspective, how a patient navigator or a nurse navigator helps the patient access the best care?
Well, I should point out that we didn't have a nurse navigator for a long time. So the absence of a nurse navigator isn't inherently a bad thing. But then when you do get one, you really realize their true value. So Charity performs a number of different roles. On the simplistic level, she is the Walmart greeter. She introduces herself to the patient. She makes them feel like there's a human being who cares. But then on the backside, she has technical expertise to make sure that if you're coming in to see us, there's no missed gaps. All of the data, the pathology report, the scan reports, everything is there so that the doctor and you can have the most useful interaction. If you're coming from out of town, she's not the scheduler, but she's going to make sure that if there are things that have to be done, repeat scans, that she's going to try and bundle them together in the time that you have available.
I think that's such a great point, because you do so many second opinions. And I'm thinking of people who come to you from all over the country, and they maybe fly into Denver and they've got 48 hours or 3 days, or they're here on a Friday and a Monday or something like that. And I think, taking into account what you just said, that a patient navigator can help kind of smooth all of those things. It doesn't mean that without a program, that's a problem. But how does a patient navigator help gather up all of this data that you need, or all of the tests, or all of the scans, or all of these elements that may be really difficult for someone who's coming into town to think, oh gosh, do I have this and do I have that? And, it's a long checklist. Is that what she's really working on?
I think once you're in the medical system, you start to generate paper. And I think the challenge is, particularly if, you are just the recipient of this medical care, you don't know which stuff's important. And, chasing down 15 pages of blood tests, which the doctor doesn't care about, isn't useful. Whereas Charity is so experienced, she can say, look, you need this, this, and this. And she can also come to me and say, is this enough information, a few days before the appointment? And I can say, well, everything's there, but this bit's missing. And so it's about having a trained set of eyes, making sure everything's there. I guess if I was to think of an analogy, when you go to the operating room, they always have someone in charge called the scrub nurse. And it's their job to make sure that the surgeon goes in there and they're not going, where the hell's the scalpel in the middle of the operation? So that's what Charity's job is, to do the medical oncology equivalent, that everything's there.
All the information that you need. So she mentioned that you work on a multidisciplinary team. Yeah. So can you talk about all of the people that might be involved in a lung cancer, either diagnosis or treatment plan, and how she is helping gather data that I would assume everybody on the team needs, either the same data or some different piece of data or something like that? I mean, how is she helping get the right information to the right people, or even maybe the patient to the right person?
Well, so the great thing is we have electronic medical records. So she just has gathering and just gets scanned in, and it's there. But I think what you really want in a navigator is to believe that if you're scared, but you've spoken to this person on the phone, that when you arrive, there's the equivalent of a familiar face there to greet you, and that they have your back, that they are not going to let you down until you have a plan and you know where you're going to next. And so, Charity doesn't stay with the patient forever, but they will move you on and pass you over to someone. And she's only going to step back when another person has taken you over and you have a plan in place.
I can imagine what a relief that would be for someone facing that, onslaught of a diagnosis or a second opinion, where you are trying to figure out who to talk to and, if you're headed in the right direction. Now, what about someone who doesn't have access to a patient navigator? You mentioned you didn't, have a patient navigator program for a number of years. If somebody is walking into a hospital and there's no patient navigator program, is that a problem? Should they be worried?
No. I mean, I think, in a good team, you have redundancy. You have people who, I tend to employ obsessive compulsive people so that everybody is double checking and triple checking somebody. And so, the schedulers perform that role or the nurses perform that role. And indeed, if you put all your eggs in one basket, what happens if Charity goes away on vacation? You still have to have those other things. So I think a navigator is a nice to have. It is by no means essential. And if you don't happen to have access to one, it doesn't mean you're getting inadequate care.
Something just popped into my head, and this is, very just a definition, really. Talk about the difference between a scheduler and a patient navigator. Those are two very different positions that work together, and both of them are critical, but they are different.
Yes, I think one of the things that the navigators and even the clinic nurses get most frustrated by is being treated as schedulers. So the scheduler is literally the person who says, okay, you need a CT scan. It's going to be on this day and this time, and this is where you go, or your chemotherapy. And so they are the logistics person. The nurses and the navigators are requesting that information from the schedulers. But a good scheduler, we often make a point of, whenever we get new schedulers, of carefully integrating them, educating them about the program. They're not just a call center. And so they get to understand that too. So, as I said, there can be some redundancy.
And so someone like Charity might go to the scheduler and say, okay, I've got somebody coming in from out of town. They need this test, this test, this test. How would Charity then interact with the scheduler to make sure that all of those tests are sitting and waiting ready for you, when you walk in the office?
She's a bit of a bulldog. So she would say, I need these things done, and tell me when you've done it. And if she doesn't get that, that feedback, then she's, saying, have you done it? Have you done it? And then when she passes it in the nicest possible way, then she passes it on. I mean, that honestly, I think if you had to sum a navigator up in a word, it's about trust. You trust the navigator to have your back. And, we were just incredibly fortunate to have Charity. We joke, we call her Detective Helene because she doesn't miss any detail.
That's got to be an amazing personality to work with. I'm just thinking of all of the amazing people that you work with, and yourself included. And, to have somebody there who you can trust to be that very polite but insistent bulldog, who's a detail person.
But I do not believe a team is made up of little uniform individuals who will have the same skills. I think we are all different, and we have good points and bad points. And the key thing about a team is you try and emphasize the good points and you de-emphasize the bad points, but you tolerate all of it.
Well, I think that's a great description and a wonderful conversation about this program. And I'm really appreciative of your time today to talk about it. And I hope it's something that more and more hospitals or academic institutions might be putting into place to help people navigate what is a particularly challenging diagnosis.
I think as the field gets more and more complex, we are going to need this. You can't just plug and play everything these days. And so you are going to need a wingman to help you through these things, or woman.